Welcome to the Earning Freedom Program. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com, here with episode 3, the final episode with my friend Luis Rivera. Now, if you'd like to get the background, you might listen to that first podcast webinar where we spoke about what it was like for Luis to be sentenced to life in prison, followed by 140 years when he was only 27 years old, and that was for a crime that did not include any allegations of violence, but yet was resulted in it was at the heart of the dawn of the war on drugs, and he was just brutally penalized by the system. But that didn't stop his spirit. And in episode 2, we heard a lot about that, about how Luis was transferred from medium security prisons and low security prisons into a high security penitentiary where he was immersed in the institution of violence, but yet maintained a positive spirit, a focus, and an energy that would position him for the relief that he eventually got. Earlier, I'd spoken that he was released through an executive clemency order, but he corrected us in episode 2, talking with us about how a very prominent lawyer by the name of Sam Sheldon at Quinn Emanuel reached out and agreed to help Luis with assistance from Julie Stewart from the Families Against Mandatory Minimums organization. So we heard all of this story, and today we're going to hear about what it was like to come out of prison after 30 years of being locked inside, what his initial adjustment has been like. And I'd like to share a little bit about what I learned from that story. And I want to have like a dialogue with Luis. So I just wanted to let the viewers know that's what we'll be doing in this 3rd episode. So you okay? Did I accurately reflect what we've covered so far, Luis?
Yes, you did. Very accurately.
Great. So I want to start in the beginning here, Luis, and say what I did learn from you is that in the very beginning phases of your journey, you'd mentioned that you were not thinking about getting out of prison. You were just thinking about doing time. Is that basically what you told us?
Yeah, it's the trap that most people fall in when you first come in. It's not. It's a surreal type environment, you know.
And so I want to say I started in prison around the same time as you. I came in a little bit later, and I was a little bit younger, and I got out of prison a little bit earlier. And I don't know your age right now, but obviously I was younger when I started. I was younger when I got out. I started in 1987. I was 23 years old, and I was sentenced to 45 years in prison under the same statute that convicted you, the Continuing Criminal Enterprise statute. But there was a bit of a difference in my adjustment when I started. Like you, I heard this same message that we hear from so many people in prison, and I consider that to be a very bad message. And that message is one that you later pulled yourself away from. It was the best way to serve time is to forget about the life outside of prison and just focus on your time inside. Is that something that was influencing your early adjustment?
Yeah, it is, but believe it or not, it's sort of what you have to do to survive. If you start thinking about the street too much, okay, you cannot survive inside. Okay, besides being homesick and missing your family and just having the normal human touch, you know, when you touch your mother's, father's hand or something like that, hold the children's hand, the human connection is very important. In prison, you don't have that. So part of your survival is not thinking about that and focusing on where you're at, you know, so you don't get too homesick or depressed.
But you later started to change that. Isn't that correct? You later changed that and did start thinking about going home and what you could be doing to get out. In fact, what I heard you say in episode number 2 was the only thing that I wanted to do to help myself was to get out of prison. Am I right? That later came.
That's true.
So I want to reveal a little bit that was a different strategy. And of course, I don't purport to have all of the answers. The reality is we can learn from everybody. And I'm sure that everybody who's listened to these first 2 episodes of yours, Luis, has learned a lot about what does it take to make it through prison successfully. But I can tell you that something that was fundamentally different for me is that when I began, and I was facing that sentence of life without the possibility of parole, just like you were, The difference is unfortunately, the judge hammered you with that. The judge hammered me with 45 years. But before I was sentenced, I was exposed to a level of thinking by reading Socrates, who convinced me to start thinking about, don't think about what's happening to me, but rather think about the people with whom I want to connect in the future. I wanted to find lawyers that would come into my life. I wanted to find professors that would come into my life. I wanted to be thinking, even though I hadn't even been sentenced yet, even though I knew that I was going to spend multiple decades of time in prison. I began the journey with this thought: someday I'm going to get out of here. Someday people are going to see me and they're going to judge me. And either they're going to judge me for the bad decisions I made when I was 20 years old that locked me in prison, or they're going to see me for the way that I responded to it. And because I had that mindset, I had a different adjustment, where from the first day that I was inside, that's all I thought about. How am I going to get out? And it didn't matter what I thought. What I thought was that what matters are these people that I want to will into my life. I want to influence them and persuade them that I am worthy of their support. And may I ask you, Luis, had you begun in that manner, would that have had any influence in the decisions that you made through that journey?
Oh, yes, it would have greatly affected it. But you have to remember, hindsight is what everything is about. And what you're talking about is a growing experience that we all have when we go into prison. And before you get to the level that you're talking about now, the first thing you have is the pity me. Look what happened to me. And I didn't start doing that because I didn't have a finite sentence or a date to look at. Because most people start saying, well, in the last 5 years, well, then I'm going to start preparing. I'm going to start working out, buff up and everything else that they're going to do. I didn't have any date. And people kept saying, well, you're going to die in prison. You don't realize this is the feds. This is not the state. The feds take all this very seriously. And so mine was a growing experience that I had to reach a certain level before I started thinking like you were. And once I started maturing and going over it, and starting to learn to cut away the distractions, the people who are trying to drag you down, the gangs that are trying to get you to join their side, and all that, you start focusing. And then you start focusing on yourself, and you start saying, can I make myself a better person? Because I'm not this person that they are talking about, not what they wrote about in the papers. Okay, they don't know me. So now you start to focus on your image and to make yourself better. And it's a funny thing that, it's a difficult process to start, because like everything, nobody knows always where to start. But once you start it, okay, it's like exercising. You feel good. And then you want more and you want more. And you keep building and expounding upon it. Okay. You had the insight even before you went to jail, okay, where I should say, went to the prison part of your experience, okay? So you had a direction. You knew that you're going to do so much time, and this is the way it goes. In mine, I didn't know because I had no date, and I always felt that, well, I'm going to get released. I'm going to overturn this, and that's what impeded my judgment at the very beginning, okay?
That's why you're so valuable to this program, Luis, is because you're helping me communicate with people that are just like you. People who do not have a release date. They are locked in prisons, and it's our job to accelerate that growth that you just spoke about. And you are the ideal person. There couldn't be anybody better because you have that credibility. You did 30 years. You did have a life sentence. You were told repeatedly, you got nothing coming. There's nothing we can do for you. Don't even come to team. But somehow you found the strength within to tune out and reject that negative message and instead focus on your success. And that later resulted in Julie Stewart, as you told us in the second episode, remembering you even though years had passed since she'd seen you. She remembered you, from what I heard you say, as an individual who was disciplined, who had value to give, who she remembered even though years had passed, and as soon as she was connected with you again by your own efforts, she said, I want to help you. And then she persuaded a lawyer to get involved in your case. And that lawyer wanted to help you. And that effort resulted in later a prosecutor wanting to help you and a judge wanting to help you. And now you're here with us. And I just want to communicate that message to as many people in prison as I possibly can. And maybe you have something to say about that, about what they should be thinking about, how their decisions inside prison have a direct result on what can happen in their future.
Yeah, I do. And one of the things I want to convey to them, and, you know, and it's very hard for somebody to understand when you're in prison. First of all, you're surrounded by what's going on around you, the gangs, everything, that you can get out. Times have changed. When they gave me the sentence they did, it was during the time where they were doing mass incarcerations. They were handing out heinous sentences. It was just a fad going on at that time. And fortunately for us today, that we have people, prosecutors, politicians that realize this, and they want to correct that. So if you think you're in prison and you're not getting out, you're wrong. And the only thing that'll prevent you from getting out is you. And if you still have that stupid belief, you will remain in prison. Okay. And all I can say is, don't get into the violence thing. Stop. Don't get involved in any kind of violence, because that's the key. If there was nothing else, that's the one thing that will prevent you from getting out. Not your crime before. It's your violence and your actions while you are inside right now. If you belong to gangs and you're doing violent things, well, you're staying. I guarantee you will remain in prison. But anybody else, and I don't care what your record is, you stand a chance on getting out if you want to. But you have to make that change. And you have to say, listen, I'm not getting absorbed by this negative behavior in here. I'm not becoming part of that. I'm not about that to begin with, so why am I going to let that happen to me? Don't fall for it. Don't get involved in it. Do your own thing. And I guarantee you're going to get out. You might not get out right now, but you're going to get out. If you look at some of these presidential commutations, I'm sorry. If you look at some of them today, a lot of them had violence. A lot of them had guns in there, and they're still getting it. And one of them, several friends I just had that got their release, aren't being released today. But what it says that you're granted clemency and you will be released, but it will be within 5 years. Okay. And that kind of what they're doing is they're trying to prevent a mass incarceration of people leaving out the door at one time to prevent from scaring the public. And it also allows them to watch you, to continue watching. Remember, that is not carved in stone. If you get stupid, or any of those guys get stupid while they're in there, they'll take that time away. They'll take that clemency away from them. Until they walk out the door, that is not permanent. So you can change your behavior. You can change what you're doing, if you want to go home. And believe me, after getting out, the world is a beautiful place.
And we're going to talk about that in the last portion of our interview, Luis. Could you tell our audience a little bit about what it's been like your first year? Describe for us your first year in society after being confined for 30 calendar years.
Well, I've been asked that question several times, and I answer it the same way every time. Waking up every morning is like Christmas. It is exciting. You cannot wait to get up. Okay. In prison, you had to find a reason to wake up every day. Okay. It was the same thing. It was like the movie Groundhog Day. Same thing every day, the same stupid people bothering you, the same crummy chow. If it was Wednesdays, it was burgers, nothing changed. But when you step out, you have so many opportunities. And anybody who tells you, oh, you can't find a job, they're lying. Okay. You might not find exactly the job that you dream of, but there's work out there if you want it. And right now here in this area, we're going through a building growth to the point where they were saying on the news, on TV, that they cannot find enough general contract, construction workers. There's a shortage. So
tell us about some of the employment you've found since you've come back to society.
I was working the next day when I got out. Okay. I arrived home probably about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, something, real early. And I had a job the next day. Okay. Now, granted, it was from, a friend of mine. Okay. But I immediately got dressed and got to work, because that was one of the key things to do, not to think about anything. Don't go out and party and say, oh, I'm going to do all this. Bull. Okay. You have to focus on what life is really about. And everybody else out here is struggling. And it's the way the world is. Okay. To make a living, to support your family, and to, to buy yourself a few creature comforts. So get to work right away. And that's what I did. And, you have plenty of time for everything else, and the distractions won't hurt you. The bars, the girls, and everything else, you acclimate yourself in time with them.
Mm-hmm. So the internet did not exist when you went into prison, Luis, and now you find yourself really immersed in technology. I noticed that you have a very high-end microphone, professional grade. You've got computers behind you. You're very fluent in talking on media. Tell us what steps you took to educate yourself with regard to technology, being that you were separated from technology for so long.
When I first went in, the closest to a computer out there was the little Apple computer that had just come out. I think it was the Apple 1 or 2. And it was very difficult. I bought one, and I didn't know any computer language, so it was difficult for me to use, and I didn't get into it. When I went in, okay, they had computers available, but at medium levels, only certain people were still allowed to use them, okay? And after a few years, they started taking all those away from you. So if you didn't have a little grasp on it at the beginning, you just kind of missed out on it. And then when you get to the penitentiary level, hardly anybody gets to use a computer unless they work in Unicor or something like that. And they're not regular computers. They're a very special proprietary system that they use over there. So learning to use a computer inside it was very difficult. And sometimes they had little classes, but the system that you're learning, like the operating system, the highest one I think they had over there at the time was Windows 8. Okay, and that was in about 2015. And there's the little CAN programs where it's not a real computer that you're using. It has like a little CD, and you get to answer yes or no, to push a button, what do you do, type thing. But the technology, I love technology. Mike, I can't get over the cell phone. That little thing is a miniature computer, and it is incredible, and it is so much fun. You do not need a regular computer when you get out. A cell phone is great.
So tell us how you're earning a living now. It's been a year since you've been back in society. You're dealing with this. I presume you're dealing with a federal probation officer on supervised release or parole or something along those lines. Tell us about your life now.
Okay, when I got out, I had an unusual situation. Because of the way they structured my time, they got rid of the life without parole, okay? Then several of the other counts were run at the same time or dismissed. So I wound up with two 40-year sentences, which were running at the same time, but they had expired a year and a half before I got out, technically. Okay, so when I got out, I had a special parole supervision or special supervision. And when I went to, the probation guy, he didn't know what to do either. He says, technically, your time's run out. We don't know what to do with you. We can't really violate you, so to speak, because there's no time for you to serve. Your 40 years are over, But he said, we have to go through this paperwork. So they put me on the no mind list. Okay, I don't really have to report to them. They'll call once in a while and see how I'm doing. But, it's very good. They give me a lot of leeway. And I don't know if it's because of my record or I happen to have a very good probation officer, but they really work with you. I mean, they're not trying to punish you or harass you or anything else. They're trying to make sure that you have what you need to survive and work, which has been a big benefit to me.
So how are you earning a living now?
Well, basically, I'm doing, I have a private car service, okay, which is, similar to like an Uber type job, where people will call you up and say, listen, we need to go here or there, and I'll do that. I do deliveries for businesses, and I also do a little bit of construction work.
How do you find clients?
Basically, they wind up finding me. Sometimes if I'm driving or doing something, I hand out a card, and because of the van I drive is, fairly late model, and I'm very respectful. I bring a lot of older attitudes with me. I dress up, okay, which is one of them. And, for women, you open the doors and stuff like that, or an umbrella if it's raining. And they see that and they recognize that, that's not done every day. Most of the drivers are wearing shorts and look like slobs and have a beer in the front seat or something, and they don't like that. So I get a lot of recommendations, and it helps.
Mm-hmm. And tell us about your earnings. How are the earnings for somebody in that career? If somebody wants to do that when they come home, what type of earnings can they make?
Well, I couldn't tell you the full end of it, because I do it like on a part-time, but you could, even if you go with something strictly like Uber, you'll make plenty of money. I mean, you won't get rich. Okay. You have to drive in what we call the little higher class. You have Uber X and Uber XL and Select, where I am. And the XL and Select on up, you can make money out of. Okay. The little
How
X is
much a
very,
month? If somebody's planning on coming home and they want to be thinking, okay, I've got a budget, I've got to earn enough to pay for an apartment, buy clothes, get whatever I need. How much can that person expect to earn in that role that you just described?
well, we're going to imagine right now, if you're just going with Uber, that way somebody else is providing you with the jobs.
Sure.
Okay. You can expect to earn about $500 a week. Okay. Minimum.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you'll
Mm-hmm.
work your way up. And of course, there is no salary. You're an independent contractor. So only the rides that you get count towards your money.
Mm-hmm.
You will
And
not
did you
get
say that you had a van? Is that your van? So you were able to buy a van?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have a minivan, yes.
Were you able to, so you were able to build your credit? Because when I got out of prison, I know that I had a 000 credit score. I worked to build that up, and I took a methodical pathway to get there. How about you? You've been out for a year now. What has been your experience with credit?
I try to avoid as much credit as I can. Okay. I try to pay cash. And like when I bought the van, I put a good down payment on it. And you do the little things that get you extra, things like automatic deductions from your bank account, which is really good. They like it better. They give you a discount on that, okay, by doing things like that. I've had no credit problems. I stay within my bounds, you know. That's the first thing. Don't go out and get a whole bunch of credit cards, because that automatically makes you look bad. Okay. Keep your credit score up as much as you can. Pay cash for what you can, and you'll have no problems.
And I noticed that you've got a lot of computer equipment. Tell us why you made that investment in this high-end professional grade computer and audio equipment. What are you doing with that?
Well, I'm going to be doing so much what you're doing right now, pod and video casting. And one of the things that I want to do is on the commercial end, I'm going to, for the Fort Myers, Naples area, I'm making, it looks like a video magazine, but on your phone, you'll have an app. And when you tap that app, it opens up to my site. And in my site shows you all the nightclubs and bars and restaurants in town, where you actually have an inside view of what's going on. So you can determine by looking at your app if you want to go to that place. Is that a happening place? Is there a nice crowd there? Okay. And it allows people that are in there, okay, to do just like they're doing with your show, but they can broadcast to you. Okay. So we have one person who sits at a central board, and if somebody gets in there and they want to get on their phone and they do like a little, what do you call that? When you're doing selfies, but with a video, you can show yourself live, like in that club, having a good time with your friends and saying hi to all your buddies and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. So are you working to build yourself an online presence in society then, so that people can get to know who Luis Rivera is and how they can get in touch with him?
Well, I avoid most of that. I don't have an ego or anything like that. I'm doing mostly for a business, and the other half that I was talking about is more of a public service, where I'm helping my local church over here get online so they can broadcast. And I'm going to be doing so much of what you're doing, helping people who were formerly incarcerated find their way out here. And I'm going to tell them, where to go, where the jobs are. If you contact me and you're in my area, I'm going to physically help you get a job. If I have to come over and pick you up and drive you there, I want to see people get that start like people help me.
And so how could people find you? If people want to get to know your organization, your business, what is the best way for those people to get in touch with you?
My business is ub1media.com. Okay.
Is that the letter U followed by the letter B?
Yes.
Followed by the digit 1?
Yes, sir. That's it. ub1 Media.
ub1 Media. And tell us what thought process went into you coming up with that clever name.
Well, it's part of, you're only looking at a small end of it. UB1 also goes with UB1 2. Okay. Which means you can be anything you want. Okay. And that's part of what the show is going to be about, inviting people to come and learn, whether they want to learn how to podcast, I'm literally going to hand carry them and show them, you know, and I'm not going to be charging for it or anything like that, because I want people to elevate themselves in life and get the opportunity that sometimes they don't have.
Mm-hmm. And how did you learn how to do podcasts and webinars and technology?
I just got on the internet and started watching and learning and reading. You know, once I saw yours, I don't know if you remember when we first met, Sam introduced us, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you told me that you had a show, and the first thing I had to do, because I remember who you are, looked at your website. I said, damn, he just got out and he's got all that, you know? And here I am struggling, and I was doing construction work there, you know, I was busting my hump, putting in windows and doors and, you know, heavy block work. And I knew that you had found something and wanted to go there.
Well, I'll tell you, if you have any questions, I hope that you'll ask, because I'm more than happy to share how I learned. But I did it the same way as you, Luis, as I just watched YouTube videos, saw how other people were doing it, and really felt passionately about wanting to resolve what I consider to be the greatest social injustice of our time, laws that keep nonviolent people incarcerated for multiple decades and life sentences sometimes. I wanted to bring more awareness to that. And that's why I began with using video, because it's very easy to scale. You can load it up onto YouTube. You can disseminate it through social media. And I do it, you know, on my own time, because I do want to show more people how to come out exactly as you have come out, how to influence others to help them and come back to society as taxpayers so that they can enjoy all the wonders of life. And I'm just so honored that you have taken so much time out of your schedule, when time is so valuable to you, to share this message with our audience. And I really want to thank you, Luis, and friend, and hope that if there's ever a question you have about technology, if I can answer it, you can count on me to do so.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm going to be calling on you to be my mentor.
Okay. Well, how old are you now, Luis?
I'm 60 years old.
You're 60. I'm about to turn 53. We've given a lot of our lives to the Bureau of Prisons, and now we're out here really doing the best that we can to inspire those who are inside, to help them see what they can become. I certainly know that had I listened and learned from you when I was starting my journey, I would have been inspired. And I'm sure that many of the people who are listening to this program can feel the same way. Do you have a family now, a woman in your life?
No, not yet. I got my eyes open, but no, I don't have one. You know, the funny thing is I still have some of the social stigma from being incarcerated, where I don't go out much. Most of the time it's just work, come back here, study, you know, and I pretty much live in my room doing what I'm doing, learning how to use the computer, learning how to, you know, use all the technology. The one good thing I'd like to say, though, is being incarcerated so long that I didn't have to play catch up when I came out, because everything I knew was gone. Okay. So I got the privilege of learning everything all over again. Okay. So that's where the fun came in. So I'm having a good time out here. And trust me, when you tell people about the YouTube videos, all you guys are incarcerated, I don't care what it is. The most bizarre thing you can imagine, how to open a pocket knife, is on YouTube. Okay. So you can learn anything. I don't care if you have no education at all. You sit there and watch those videos on YouTube, you will learn.
Well, I hope that many of those people are going to be listening and learning from you, Luis. We've come to the end of our third episode, and I just again want to take this time to thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us. Luis Rivera, I'm going to leave you the final word with you, if you have any final words to say to the people in our audience.
Well, thank you, Mike, and it's been a pleasure being on your show. But what I do want to say to the people that are incarcerated, trust me when I tell you, it is not permanent. You can go home, but you have to do it. You have to work on it. Stay out of trouble. Educate yourself as much as you can, because this is what people on the outside are looking at. In my situation, they physically called the prison and they asked them, they called over every department, the education department, the recreation department, and that prosecutor talked to those people. He wanted to know, what was I really doing? Okay, what kind of person I was before he put his reputation on the line and let me loose. Okay, so they're going to be doing the same on you. Don't think you can fool them with a few silly little classes. They're going to call and they're going to check on you, but you will go home.
The harder you work, the luckier you get. Thanks so much for spending this time with the Earning Freedom Podcast.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll have show notes available at michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. And we'll be back soon with another inspiring guest. Thanks.